All right, wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining us. Again, this is our Farm to School BC webinar series that we're doing every week on Wednesday. And today we are having Wade Rowland from the Cheakamus Centre. And they're an important part of our Vancouver area hub. We just had a couple new people join, so I just want to give a little bit of an intro. So I'm joining us in Kamloops here, the traditional and unceded territory of the Cheakamus people. And I'm looking outside and my Saskatoons are starting to go pink. I am so excited. And just be thankful that we can live and work and learn on this beautiful space that is has been preserved and inhabited by millennia for many, many people. So I'd like to pass it over to Wade now. Are you ready to go?
Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm very happy to be here this morning and once again seeing members of the public, even if it's on Zoom. It is the first time I've ever been the focus of a webinar, so I'll apologize in advance if I start skipping around or repeating myself. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Squamish Nation upon whose unceded traditional territory the Cheakamus Centre resides. I'd also like to thank Swasia and Henry Williams, two Squamish Nation elders who have shared many points of knowledge with me in the past. For those of you who don't know us, Cheakamus Centre is an outdoor experiential learning center owned and run by the North Vancouver School District 44. Children will come up, stay overnight, and they do several different programs and programming up here. So they look at field studies, farm studies, forest studies, and my interest is introducing them to food systems. So we do several things like we tap maples in the winter and spring. We pick apples and do apple pressing in the fall in that season. And right now we're working up the programming around gardens. So this is how I came to be part of Farm to School and the Coalition for Healthy Food in Schools, and etc. Today, we're going to be looking at a video I made for making bannock, and as well as ricotta cheese. So I'll start with the ricotta cheese. It's a great way to use up any stale dated liquid dairy in your fridge. So one of my pet peeves is the best before date, which is a quality guarantee, versus the expiration date, which is a food safety issue. So expiration, the only thing in Canada that you put in your body that expires are medications and baby food, as far as I know. Everything else, that date on the label is an expiration date. So if you open your fridge and that milk is from 2 days ago and you're not comfortable drinking it, then this is something you could do with it. You could make some ricotta cheese. It's very simple, very quick, and you're gonna see how to do that. Bannock is, what's the difference between Bannock and Teabiscuit? They have the same ingredients, they can have the same form, they can look identical, but I always see Bannock as something that is shared. In First Nations culture, it is present at almost every gathering. It also comes in many different forms. So you can have small ones, large ones, ones that are made to be sliced or just broken up. The one I'm showing you today is the one I make when I'm at home and with my family. When someone forgets to order bread or tell me that we're out of bread and we want to have breakfast, I can make this in 10, 15 minutes. It's very simple. So there, over time, I've seen many, many different varieties of bannock. So some are leavened with yeast, some are leavened with chemical leavening like baking powder or baking soda. They can be baked, they can be fried, they can be deep fried, they can be roasted, they can be cooked on a stick. But in every instance, whenever the word bannock is used, it's been to share with a group. So for instance, for a wedding, I would make bannock. If I were to sell a snack at a coffee shop, I would make a tea biscuit. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So We're going to go to the video soon. And if you have any questions while the video is running, I'm just watching with you, so I can actually have time to answer your questions. So we'll just wait for a second, and I'll apologize for the quality of the video. It's our first one. Okay. I think we can go. Is anyone getting sound?
Maybe my muting is off. Let's try this. Does that work?
I'm not getting any sound.
Oh, no. Share computer sound. Let's try this.
Okay, so what we need. You're going to need your spoons. You're going to need a knife.
Thank you. I will restart.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to Cheakamus Centre and our pro tip for the home for today. My name is Rowland. I'm the executive chef here. And today we're going to be doing the Bannock, and then we're also going to be doing ricotta cheese. Okay, so what we need. You're going to need your spoons. You're going to need a knife. Got this for zesting. But for the Bannock, this is what we're going to need. We got our measuring cup, we got our cups, measuring cups, frying pan, spatula, and a bowl. The ingredients here, I'll just grab the board, so I'll give you a shot of that. So if anybody wants to copy that down, you can scale that up or down any way you like. So I've got my baking powder, my sea salt, my flour, my water, my oil, and everything's all measured out already. So all I have to do for you today is assemble it while you watch. So first thing, clean hands. I've washed my hands. I have my hot rags, and I'm keeping all my implements up on a cloth so they're not touching the counter surface. Okay. We won't need these anymore. I'll just put those aside. So first things first, what you want to do is you want to start preheating your pan. All right. So I'm going to get that up to a medium high heat. All right. You're going to want to have a nice good sear on that. I'm going to take my watch off because you don't cook with your watch on. All right. So we're going to mix all our dry ingredients together first. Okay. So flour, baking powder, some sugar, and the salt. The sugar we add mostly because it helps with the color in the end. It'll help it be a nice, more golden brown color. We're not actually making a sweet Bannock. It's about the amount of sugar you would add to your average pancake recipe. If you want to make a sweet Bannock, you can just double up on the sugar, and it depends on what you want to add to it. So right now we've got our dry ingredients all mixed. We're ready for our liquids. Okay. So I have my 1/4 cup of oil here, and my 3/4 cups, 1 1/8 cup of water. All right, so we're just going to add those into the middle, and we're going to mix. Now, super important with things like Teabiscuit, it's a very soft dough. It's delicate. You want to mix it as little as possible. So I'm not kneading it, I'm just stirring it around with my hands, okay? Until it starts coming together, all right? And you can see how it's flaking, all right? That's good. I'm not using a lot of pressure. All right. So once it all comes together, out on the board it goes, okay? And I'm just kind of getting it into a form, right? Fold it once or twice. All right. There we go. There's our Bannock dough. Now, at this point, you can cut it. You can cut it into triangles. You can form it into a log and cut biscuit shapes. You can get some cutters and cut it. And I mean, those traditional Teabiscuit shapes. But because we're using Bannock, we're making it for Bannock, and this is a great recipe. You can toast it on a stick. You can do all sorts of stuff. If you're going to do anything like stick toasting, you're going to want it a little bit softer. What you can do is you knead it to get the glutens out, and it'll hold shape. If I try and toast this on a stick right now, it's going to fall apart all over the place, okay? So, here we are. Now, I got my hot rag. Check my frying pan. All right, frying pan's good. I'm going to throw a little bit of oil in there. Bannock also likes to have a healthy amount of oil. You want to make sure that that oil is nice and hot. You can see how it's sheeting. Okay, let that heat up for a couple of seconds. Now, at this point, you could, if you're at home, do this and put it right in a pie plate, and then just put the pie plate in. But here, things are a little bit different, so there we go. Well, I managed that with a disaster. That's awesome. I'm just going to press that down into the edges. Okay. All right. And I'm going to let that fry a little bit. So for this recipe, you can add cheese, green onions, seeds, nuts, anything you like. Like I said, we're just doing the plain one. All right, so while that's doing its thing, gonna do a quick tidy here. I'm done with these. And let's start talking about ricotta. So ricotta is a fresh cheese that's made from here. We use stale dated milk and coffee cream. So I went out today and I got a liter coffee cream because I want to show you the ratios properly. So for this, I'll need my lemon. I've got a teaspoon of salt. I have my coffee cream. I won't be using the milk today. I just wanted to put that there, show you. I've got a fine mesh sieve and cheesecloth. I folded the cheesecloth over 4 times, okay? And it's important to at least have a couple folds, not just one single layer of cheesecloth, because you'll catch more of the curd this way. Okay, I got my bucket here to catch the whey as we drain it out, and I got a mixing bowl for putting the cheese into when it's done, and I've got a pot. Okay, so we're gonna go in, and the Bannock is ready for its turn. All right, and this all happens very quickly. Okay, you can see there's some color happening. All right, there we go. And we're going into the oven now. All right, 125 degrees of oven. I'm gonna set that for 10 minutes and go. All right. All right, so while that's going, we're gonna preheat our pot for the milk. We're gonna get that on the heat. And I'm going to add our coffee cream. Just going to slice the lemon in half. So your average lemon you get at the store, your average mid-sized lemon, is going to give you about 2 ounces or 30 milliliters of juice, roughly. So sort of like 2 shot glasses worth. And this should be enough acid to break the cream. So what we're doing is we're using acid to crack the milk fats away from the whey in this cream. 18% cream will give you the most product for your effort. If you use a liter of 10% cream, you're going to get roughly half the amount of out of ricotta out of it. If you go to whipping cream, I've never had good success with trying this with whipping cream. It's just too heavy. But if you need to use some up in your fridge, because this is what that's all about, that's when you would grab your milk, okay, and you would you'd thin it out a little bit, mix it up, okay. You don't have to add the zest. If you don't add the zest, you're going to end up with a very plain flavor. And I think it needs to be said that if you, I'm just using a very tiny amount, if you use too much, it gets really bitter. Add your salt, get it dissolving. All right. As soon as that milk, that cream starts to foam up, you're going to see we're going to drop that acid in there, and you'll be able to watch the curds form. Okay, you can see some bubbles forming on the top, and you notice how it's getting that kind of almost steamed frothy look like you would see going into a latte. All right, so it's kind of starting to, this is what the latte people call your texturizing. Okay, so it's getting a silkier texture. You can see the ripples. Okay, we're very close now. When it starts looking like this, don't leave. Just sit there and watch that pot till it boils. It's going to feel like it takes forever, but won't be much. All right, you can see it boiling. All right, so I've got my lemon juice ready. There's the foam. In goes the acid. Take it off the heat and stir. There we go. And here we are. You can see, if you look below, you can see the whey starting to pull up. Yeah. Yeah. All right. There's our bannock. So you can hear that drum-like sound, all right? I don't mind it with the darkness here. I think it has a great flavor. It also reminds me more of cooking it on a stick in a campfire. But while we were waiting, I went behind and I grabbed some paintbrush. Pastry brush. What we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of oil and a little bit of honey. And if you want to make it glossy and beautiful, you can also do this trick with melted butter. And we're just going to put a quick glaze on it. Get a nice shine going. If you do this with butter and honey, it's delicious. Look at that. Nice light crumb. Okay. Now I can, you can't smell, but I can smell the honey coming off it. It's gorgeous. And because I'm me, I'm just gonna pack a little bit of coarse salt on there. All right, it's been about 5 minutes, okay? We have our whey and we have our ricotta, okay? You can see how it's pulling away from the cheesecloth easily. So, good strike. We are going to lift this out and into the bowl, okay? You see, it pretty much just falls right out. Right? And this is your texture here. So now we've got nice loose fresh curd texture. All right.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, this, I don't think there was no sound at the end there, right?
No, no, the sound kind of
Okay.
cut. We did a little kind of a, hey, what's this? And I explained it. And it sounded way too much like some kind of scripted AM DJ thing. So
Gotcha.
yeah. So there were a couple of things. Was it really jerky for everybody, or was that just me? Okay. So when
Sorry, guys. It was fine on, I'll just send the YouTube link right now.
okay.
Apologize.
Because there might have been a couple of things where the video was skipping to catch up. Did everybody see the recipe that was on the whiteboard? Okay, that's part of the video. The recipe is also on our website, cheakamuscentre.ca. So one thing about that recipe is it's vegan. So the good thing about the vegan recipe is that it deals with any allergies. So the only allergy you have to worry about is gluten, and the only cultural restriction you have to worry about is gluten. So for me, at home, I use bacon fat, and I'll add ham and cheese and all sorts of stuff to it sometimes. This one, you don't have to worry about egg allergies or dairy allergies at all. Another good note is if you were to make the ricotta cheese first, you could use the whey instead of water. So you could really use up all that dairy. Yeah, and does anybody have any questions now? So that ratio of you have, if you didn't see the recipe, it was 3 cups of flour, 3 tablespoons of baking powder, 1 1/8 cup of water, and 1/4 cup of oil. So if you add up, and a tablespoon of sugar just for color. So if you add up your flour, for every cup of flour, you're using a tablespoon of baking powder and 100 milliliters of liquid, slightly less in this case. If you use those ratios, you will, no matter what you're doing, you will end up with a dough. If you're adding more moisture to it because you like a wetter dough, like a lot of tea biscuits have a much damper dough when it first comes out, you need a little bit less in the baking powder because the moisture will carry the baking powder through. This is a very dry recipe. It's meant to be make kind of like a big thick cake. So where you would have more moist dough is you'd want to wrap that around a stick. You'd add a little more moisture to it so you could roll balls that would just, you know, a little bit sticky on the hands, but it wouldn't leave dough in your hand. So you're talking about adding a tablespoon or so of water per cup of flour to the recipe. And at that point, you want a little less baking powder in it because if you use full amount of baking powder, you're going to end up with it kind of exploding off the stick. So if you're using more moisture, so if you add a tablespoon of water, take away a teaspoon of baking powder. That's sort of the ratio you get. You need a little bit of salt in there because that helps when it does rise up, that'll help stabilize the glutens. Okay, so you get a good rise. The more you work it, the more firm a product you're going to get. So if you're adding, if you want to add green onions and cheese, for example, you would add those right before your liquids and then give it a few extra kneads and you will end up with a more defined, like if you want to cut it. So when we do it for weddings and stuff, we use cutters and we work it a little bit longer just so it maintains its shape and it's easier to handle. So the more you work it, the more you develop all those glutens, the more it'll hold its form, but it'll also shrink and it becomes a bit chewier. Are there any questions about anything for quick bits?
Could you use, I've been looking at different like breads and things and they seem to be kind of sensitive as to what kind of flour you can use. Like, do you think you could do a bannock with like half whole wheat or like a quarter, or is it just change the texture too much?
traditionally, Bannock was here. You could use all different kinds of seeds. So originally, it was done with things like plantain seed and millet seed, which grow naturally right around here. We found that if we use all-purpose flour because it's the easiest to work with. If you wanted to go to whole wheat, you just go up to about a quarter. That's fine. But yeah, it will change the texture a little bit. We used pastry flour once. We experimented with that and it made a beautiful product, but the tasted like there's baking soda in it because pastry flour has a very bitter taste. Bread flour is just too stiff. It ends up more like, it stays more like a pancake. But really, if you experiment with it and you keep the ratios, the main ratio you want to judge is your leavening to your moisture to your dries. So if you maintain that ratio of water, flour, and leavening agent, you'll do fine. You could also experiment with substituting the baking powder with a tablespoon of yeast, add that to your water, let it proof, and then add it to the mix, and you'd have a yeasted product, which will expand much more when you cook it. It'll be way more puffy.
Interesting. Cool. I didn't realize there was such a difference between all the flours.
If you look at Bannock, in the interior, they use yeasted Bannocks a lot more than on the coasts. I'm not really sure why. I also know that in many different households, they have their own recipe, which differs from the neighbors. So it's just one of those things like you can really play with it.
Awesome. Does anybody have any other questions? You can unmute yourself or type in the group chat.
I've got one here about cornmeal. Yeah, you can have cornmeal, but the problem with cornmeal is the stuff we buy in the store is very gritty. If you can't find corn flour, just run it through your food processor, blender, or with your hand blender in a jar, and just powder that up a little bit, pound it down a little bit, and then use about a quarter. Once again, a quarter of cornmeal to bread flour. Otherwise, if you don't have any bread flour in there for the glutens, you'll end up with a kind of a tortilla, and it wouldn't hold together very well.
I have a family recipe for they call it Johnny cake, which I think is a variation of journey cake, which had cornmeal in it, but it's not all cornmeal. It's kind of, if you're using 3 cups of flour, it might be 1 cup of cornmeal and 2 cups of flour, or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, my family's recipes, it sounds the same. The only difference we do is, while it's still warm, we pour a bunch of maple syrup onto a sheet and flip it upside down on there.
That sounds so good. Judy's excited.
The other thing about the Bannock recipe here is if you do it with the butter, and you can sprinkle cinnamon sugar when they're still warm. If you do individual ones, you can coat them with butter and honey, or butter and syrup, and then sprinkle a little sugar on top, or a little salt, and you end up with something that's very dessert-like. It's really is quite a plastic recipe. You can really, what's the word I'm looking for? When something's
versatile.
Hey, there we go. Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a very versatile recipe for that. If you have kids around the house, this is a great one. You can make the dough ahead of time, stick it in the fridge, and they can make their own Bannock when they get home, or they could just flatten it out, put it in a pan, and go. Obviously, if they're allowed to use the frying pans around the house. If they're younger, I found that when they're younger, they like to get their hands in the dough, and because it has so few ingredients and it's very easy to put out the ratio, you can literally just say 1 scoop of this is equal to that scoop. They can put it together. They can pound it together with their hands. They get all dirty, and then you can make it, and you can do the cooking, or they can add ingredients themselves. It can be pretty fun.
That's awesome. So I just wanted to, are there any other questions? Okay, we can ask any at any point, but I'm just gonna share my screen again. I wanted to show the Cheakamus Centre website. oh, Judy's wondering if you can use 2% milk for the ricotta,
Yep, absolutely.
whatever you have on hand. If you go to the Cheakamus Centre website and then under the Learn tab on the top, Wade has a bunch of recipes, and then there's some of these cool culinary explorations. So there's a video, a lesson plan for pickling and maple tapping. So this would be really fun to do in your class or at home with your kids. Some really great resources. And then these are some recipes that he has up there. I just did a couple of them, but there's a few more. So is this the same Bannock recipe that you have here, Wade, that we did today? Okay. So you can check it out there. And then there's salmon and a couple of other things. So you can have a look at the website. It's really great. Some more information here. Well, thank you so much, Wade. That was wonderful. I'm so excited. I'm getting really hungry.
Okay. If just a note, I noticed there's a couple questions on the ricotta. If you don't have a lemon around the house, any acid will do. And
like a white vinegar or something would be okay?
Yeah, white vinegar would work, white wine vinegar would work. It depends on what you want to use it for. We use this recipe, and that's how we make the ricotta for our lasagnas. So what I'll do is I'll make a batch of lemon ricotta. I'll mix it with spinach, and that makes a layer for a lasagna. So you can use it in sauces, pastas, spread it on toast, mix it with honey. That too is quite a versatile recipe. You can add almost any flavor you like to it.
What is the volume that you get? Like how much, like if you put a cup of milk, like a dairy product, how much ricotta do you get at the end? Like if you were
it varies for the percentage of the milk fat, but for 18% cream, you get about 400 grams of ricotta. So if you use 10% cream, you're going to get slightly above half. And if you use 2% cream, you're going to get significantly less. But you still are also making that whey, which you can use in other recipes. So you can use that for breads, biscuits. You can even use it in pasta recipes if you want to go that far.
And that's like the whey powder that you get in like exercise things, right? It's got still nutrients in there.
Oh, it's got lots of nutrients, quite a bit of protein as well. But the only problem is now that you've cracked it with acid, it's a little acidic. So I wouldn't put it in a smoothie.
Okay.
I'd be careful.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'd be great. It's very healthy for you.
Yeah, but maybe not taste that good.
It depends on what you put in it. But that's one of the things. Like if you're thinking that way, then if you use like lemon or orange or lemon lime orange to make your ricotta, then you kind of have that flavor profile carrying into your smoothie. So if you're making a banana citrus smoothie afterwards, it might work.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wade. That was awesome. So our next webinar is next Wednesday. It's from 1:30 to 2:30, and it's from Vancouver Coastal Health. And they're going to be sharing some food-related resources, food literacy things. So what we're trying to focus on in our webinars is food literacy skills. And, Wade's demonstration today, our cooking, we want people to be more food literate. So being more comfortable in the kitchen, feeling free to not be intimidated by expired milk. You can do something with it. You don't have to pour it down the drain. And in our days of short yeast supply, looking at alternatives. So just feeling more comfortable, getting more creative in the kitchen, whether you're an educator, food producer, dietitian, anything. All of these are all really important life skills to pass on to our wonderful children. Anyway, so next week you can go and sign up for the webinar on our website. And I will be putting it up later today on our Facebook page as well. So if you'd like to stay in touch with us here at Farm to School, We have regional listservs based on each one of our hubs. And we also have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and you can check out our social media. We have lots of things that we're posting on our Facebook page right now. Lots of resources, different things to do. And yeah, stay in touch. So hope to see you next week. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Wade.
One item. I'm new to this, so I've been responding to everybody's answers privately to Mel.
Oh.
I've been typing to, and Mel's been getting all the answers. So I had, how about the cornmeal? I answered that one. Can you use 2% milk for the ricotta? Yes, you can. You just get less cheese and more whey. Have I ever tried making ricotta with a non-dairy product? Is it possible? I've not tried with a non-dairy. It needs an emulsified fat for it to work, and I'm wondering if so a nut milk I don't think would work or anything like that. But interesting idea. I'd like to play with that one. Is there anybody else out there who asked me a question that Mel might have the answer for? No? Okay. Mel, thank you very much.
Mel is very educated.
Thank you, Wade. I'm really enjoying this. This is awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, maybe we can do it again some point.
Yeah, that would be great.